I loved my best friend for years, but it nearly broke me. Here's how I finally moved on after a 5-year journey. Original post. Honestly, this is pretty straightforward. We met about 2 years ago and I instantly had a crush on the guy. I honestly thought our first few nights out were dates up until the point he pretty much, okay, not dates, got it. Friendship, except funny thing. All my boxes. Anyone this well, people were shocked too. Or well. But up until about a year after we became friends, we haven't known each other for years and years. We have the same humor, like the same games and TV shows, agree on politics, want the same things in life, all well enough to get along, but still with enough differences that we about it, we discover bands together, we help each other with work and writing papers. We both think it feels weird to not see each other for a week. Problem is, I'm completely head over in love with the man and it is starting to get to the point where I don't know what to do. I thought it'd go away, but every time I meet him it's like I'm falling all over again. My friends have gone from teasing me about it to shooting me pitying looks whenever his name is brought up. My sister wants me to just stop seeing him. I go a week without talking to him and I think I'm. But whenever I see him again, it all comes rushing back. I don't know what to do. Not fun anymore. I've been on dates with some amazing guys who like me, but my feelings for my friend are stopping me from falling. It's starting to. And at this point, I see no good option. He's my best friend, the best I've ever had, and I just don't want to lose him. At this point I think asking him out would. Since it's been so to get over someone is to stop seeing them, but I don't want to lose my best friend. The finishing touch keeping me on the hook are these. Asterisk looks asterisk he gives me. I've had other friends confirm he does this because I was honest to God starting to think I was losing my whenever we're out in a group, at a party or the pub. Whenever I look over at him, it seems he's always looking at me. And these eye contacts last. Asterisk too long to be normal, like just looking at each other. Or the room, or the bar, and he does this little smile. I've never. I don't know what it means. I have no idea why. But it's the final fucking nail in this coffin of hopelessness I'm buried in right now. I don't know if I'm crazy and overinterpreting things, which is very likely, or if I should just give it a shot and ask him out, even though it might ruin the friendship, or just stop seeing him, or to just carry on and hope this feeling goes away at some point of the distant future. I'm so frustrated I want to cry, and have cried a lot. I just don't know what to do here. TLDR. I'm in love with my best friend. It has become a huge problem in my life. When we've been drinking, he keeps looking at me in a way I'd describe as smitten. If it were any other person, I don't know what to do to get out of this hole of constant heartbreak and misery and how to be able to move on to other guys. Update. So, hello. A little over 5 years ago, I made a post on this subreddit looking for advice on how to handle my incredibly painful, unrequited love for my best friend. I'd honestly forgotten about this until making a password reset on another account and saw Tops 13 among my email search results. But as I read through the post, I remember how very comforting and terrifying the responses to my post was. Being a more or less unanimous ask him out that scared my ass to death. Sorry that this isn't really a happy update, but I don't know. It felt weird seeing something I wrote in what feels like a different life, and the people who responded seemed so genuinely kind and trying to help. I feel like I weirdly owe some kind of update. Especially for that one dear, sweet commenter whose account is now deleted. I wish I had a way to reach out to them, because that was one of the most thoughtful comments I think I've ever gotten. And just to recap, with hindsight, I really was in love with, and I had been for about 2 years, like, full 9 yards in love. Struggling to breathe when he talked about someone else, but still cheering him on because he deserved happiness levels of in love. If that sounds a bit like obsession to you, then that's because it probably was. The thing about unrequited love, the thing that really sucks about it, is that it's incredibly hard to move on from, but until you do move on, your brain keeps obsessing about it to the point where it can be impossible to get anything done. It had been 2 years of that when I made that post. 2 years of pining and pain and an ever-growing pile of crushed hopes, and I think I was going a little bit insane, constantly swinging between butterflies and love highs when I was with my friend, and the crushing feeling of rejection every time he'd say goodbye, and the obsession over things like how long he'd look at me, how long he'd let a hug last, how fast he'd respond to my texts, things which could either make or break my entire day, depending on what the answer was. On to the about a month and a half or so after I made that post, still trying to hype myself up to actually ask this man out, I accidentally became a head organizer for an event at the university I was studying at for the moment. Long story short, the person managing me was not kind. I was extremely overworked from the event on top of writing a thesis. I was equally stressed out in my private life due to the whole situation with my best friend, and I ended up going through a pretty severe case of burnout, add on to everything that I developed an addiction to alcohol to try to handle everything, and was also experiencing what was most likely a drug-induced paranoid psychosis, and I was a mess. I ended up moving back in with my dad in September and spent about a year doing nothing but sleeping, crying, playing Skyrim and going to rehab and therapy. Start of 2021. I went back to school and slowly recovered. I've been sober since 2020. The paranoia hasn't completely gone away, but it's more manageable. I used to think my landlord listened to me through a radon measurement device, and at least that's over. And I think I got a work-life balance figured out that helps me not overwork myself or go into free time lethargy because I got too much time off. It was long and painful, but I did it. If you're wondering where my best friend was in all of this, I don't know. I went back to look at our text messages, and from what I can see, he tried to call me a few times in early September. I didn't respond, and then nothing until around Christmas when he wondered if I wanted to meet up sometime. I said yes, and then never followed through. He hasn't texted me since January 4th, 2020. Now, to be clear, I don't blame him for not reaching out more. My non-responding is what killed that friendship. I know, because it also killed every other friendship I had at the time. I don't know. Alcohol addiction, deep depression and crippling paranoia may be a fair explanation to one day stop responding to any of your friends, but I still deeply regret those choices. If I were to make a relationships post today, it would be on how the fuck you word an apology after behavior like that 5 years down the road. Sorry, I feel like this is starting to become a journal. I'm gonna stop my reflections there. So, about my love for my best friend, with some years of hindsight and therapy behind me, I don't think I was in love with him. I think I was in love with the idea of him, and I think I was obsessed for sure, but looking back, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I think a part of me really liked the fact that this was a person who so clearly wasn't interested in me, genuinely. If he was, that would shock me to find out, because he spent 2.5 years ignoring the in hindsight very obvious attempts I made to deepen the relationship. Some examples include him saying he's waiting for the right person, me responding, sometimes I feel like I already have. Do you ever feel like that? And him going, nah, I don't think so. Me following that up with, maybe you just don't know, the heart is weird sometimes. And him going, I'm pretty sure I'd know. One time we talked about why people fall in love, and I genuinely tried to convince him a deep friendship was all you needed, while he insisted that there needed to be a level of sexual attraction as well. I tried to get him to do that 36 questions that will make you fall in love thing with me. I kept trying to find excuses to hold his hand. Rest in peace, my palm reading career. You were nothing but a thinly veiled attempt at finger touching, and him resolutely never going along with it. Ditto, but with hugs, arm touching, and sitting just a little too close whenever we went out so I could hear him better, which he normally responded to by going, we should go outside so you can hear better if it's too loud in here. Very thoughtful, but very much not what the goal was. One night, when we were alone in my apartment after a club event, after a particularly long, shared look, I asked him what he was thinking about in that kind of, I don't want to break the illusion soft voice you put on when you're really fucking close to someone you like, and his response was, I don't know if I agree that Gertz's metaphor about linking makes that much sense actually. For context, we bickered about that earlier in the night, since we just read some article about it in class. I did not expect it to make a comeback at that point. Another night, when we were out together and there had been a lot of looks and closely leaned in laughing together, and he pulls me to one side by the hand to talk to me about something, heart racing, only to ask me if I know if one of my friends is single because he thinks she's really fucking cute and might have been looking at him all night. Looking back, at least some of this stuff is sort of funny. I have no idea if he knew or knows. Now that I was in love with him, I wouldn't be surprised if some of my old friends eventually told him, but of course he's never reached out about it. But yes, I think I kinda like the security of this person who clearly didn't like me back. Not that I was doing well with the heartache, but there's a certain kind of fucked up comfort that comes from pining for someone who doesn't want you back. Like the highs I get when I got something that felt like confirmation made up for the lows of crying in my apartment stairway when I got home after a denial. Today, I mostly just feel so bad for him and ashamed of myself. regardless of whether he knew or not, and I'm trying to cling to the fact that he seemed to at least continue wanting to be friends as some indicator that he never felt creeped out or uncomfortable. My behavior was pretty fucking creepy, and in the end, once I did that distance between us, the feelings went away. After some 6 months or so, my therapist recommended not meeting this person again, for my own sake, and by early 2020 I wasn't so painfully in love anymore. A while later I'd end up meeting a guy I clicked with just as much, who actually liked me back and showed it. We've been together for almost 3 years now, and are talking about starting to try for kids at some point soon. He'd like us to get married first, but is also insisting he wants to be the one to propose. So I'm walking around waiting for the day. Even if it's not a huge surprise or secret, he just wants to get that moment of going down on one knee, and who am I to deny him? I'm slowly growing old and bored. I'm sober. I go to my boring, stable, middle career 9-5 job. I save for my retirement and traveling in the summers. I help my dad out on his farm. I crochet little animals for my newborn niece. I come home to a man who plays his silly video games. I play my silly video games. We go for walks into the museum and bicker about whether to get fat on takeout or not. I have some regrets about how my early 20s ended up playing out, but by God, I wouldn't want to go back. TLDR. I didn't ask him out. Instead, I had a severe mental health crisis. Stopped talking to all my friends, got sober, crawled my way back, and now looking back, I'm surprisingly happy with how life turned out. Oh, and I genuinely did not exaggerate those looks. I remember them very clearly, and once had a mutual friend comment on it. I still have no idea what was up with those. He doesn't strike me as a person who would try to keep someone on the hook or anything, more like he was just painfully socially oblivious. But I still wonder so much about those goddamn looks, man. Now to the next story. Story 2. Am I the asshole for calling my father's wife a creep after she crossed boundaries with my daughter? Original. My 32F father, 60s, has been married to Sasha, fake name, 40s, for almost a decade. I was already an adult when they started seeing each other, so I never had much of a relationship with her. That said, Sasha was nice and thoughtful, though a bit annoying at times, and I never had any problems with her. I now have a husband, 34 meters, and 2 kids, 9 meters and 4F. Sasha is very fond of my children, especially my daughter. That became very suffocating pretty quickly, so we started setting some boundaries. She never overstepped them. In January, my father and Sasha decided to go on a trip to Disney World and invited us to join them. We decided to go to celebrate our son's 9th birthday. I quickly regretted coming along. Sasha spent the entire trip fussing over my daughter in ways that overstepped almost every boundary we'd set. Examples include, Sasha bought a mini ears tiara. She wanted me to buy my daughter an identical one so they could match. My daughter didn't like the tiara, so I bought her a Donald Duck hat instead. Sasha got her the tiara anyway, and was upset that she didn't want to wear it. My father and Sasha went shopping in between parks. I told them not to buy my kids anything, as we still had shopping to do and didn't want to risk making our bags too heavy. Still, Sasha returned with 5 bags of clothing for my daughter and 2 for my son, saying she couldn't resist it. My daughter wanted a Belle costume to wear at the parks, as that's her favorite princess. Sasha tried to convince us to get her an Ariel costume instead, because that's her favorite. I explained that we never watch The Little Mermaid at home because my daughter is scared of Ursula. Sasha insisted on taking dozens of pictures with my daughter in front of the castle at Magic Kingdom. She also took some with my son, but not nearly as many. She tried to convince us to take our daughter to Babidi Babidi Boutique. We refused because the prices are crazy and we'd already bought her the Belle costume. She offered to pay, but we held our ground. I later found out Sasha tried to make a reservation anyway, but there was no availability. When we took our daughter to Slinky Dog Dash, her first roller coaster, Sasha tried to sit next to her. My daughter wanted to sit with me, so we switched. She tried to do the same thing in other attractions. At the Muppets Theater, she tried to get my daughter to sit in her lap. Sasha also tried to pick her up while we met some of the characters. There were more instances. The final straw for me, however, was the last park of the trip. We were at Magic Kingdom. My husband suffered a minor injury and I had to take him to the first aid station. The kids wanted to go to the Peter Pan ride, so my dad and Sasha offered to take them in the meantime. However, according to my father, the line was too long, so instead, Sasha suggested the Little Mermaid ride, assuring my kids Ursula wasn't on it. Actually, there's a pretty big Ursula animatronic there. My daughter was still sobbing and hugging her brother when we reunited. When we flew back home, I told my father that we'd no longer take our children on trips with Sasha due to her behavior. He got extremely angry. He said his wife loved my kids, thought about what they'd like to do at every moment of the trip and that we should be grateful to have her in our lives. I lost my temper at that. I told him Sasha was a fucking creep and that they should be grateful I was still okay with them even seeing my children after her actions during the trip. We ended up having a huge fight after. It's been weeks since we returned home, and my father is still angry at me and my husband. Sasha has texted me a few times. She says she's sorry if she made me uncomfortable, but that she loves my kids and hope to use the trip to spend more time with them. To be honest, I don't think I'm the here, but I do think I might have overreacted. I believe there's a chance Sasha's actions were motivated by love and she truly did have good intentions. Ida, update. Hey everyone. I'm ready to give you an update. I read your comments and came to the following conclusion. As much as Sasha's behavior towards my children angered me and freaked me out, calling her a creep was the wrong reaction to have. That said, I think it's best for my family to distance itself from Sasha for the time being. And at the very least, my previous decision to avoid future trips with her based on the Disney trip is still the best course of action. Sasha's pushiness, tendency to override my and my husband's parenting, and blatant favoritism towards my daughter were much worse. When the birth, she began to focus too much attention on her, and almost none on my son. I gave more examples of that in the comments on my original post. That's the reason we set boundaries in the first place. Her fixation on my daughter also bothers me. When we had the boundary conversation with my father and Sasha, she told us that she'd always wondered what having a daughter would be like. She'd also defined herself as child-free before, so I was never certain what to think of that. Either way, that reassured me and my husband that we were doing the best for our kids. Those boundaries had never been overstepped. Then we went on the Disney trip and most of them were completely ignored. Many of you pointed out that she might have gotten carried away, or that Disney is exciting and she wanted to make sure my kids had the best experience, etc. There are two things I'll say to that. The first is that whatever Sasha's reasons were, she still overstepped our boundaries. When we first set those, we told her that doing so would have consequences, Disney or not. I don't see a reason to make an exception. Secondly, she wasn't trying to ensure my kids had the best experience. She was pushing them to fulfill her fantasy of what their Disney trip should look like. She repeatedly ignored my children's wishes in favor of her own, despite them both being very clear about what they wanted and didn't want. Sasha also continually favored my daughter, including during my son's birthday, and fussed over her in ways that made her uncomfortable. And I still haven't forgiven the Little Mermaid thing. My daughter is a bit shy and takes a while to open up to most people, so knowing her trust was broken like that angers me in ways I can't describe. To put it in simpler terms, my children aren't props, and whoever treats them as such will, at the very least, be put in time out. I called my father and Sasha on Saturday. I apologized for calling Sasha a creep, but told them that we needed some time apart. They won't see my family until my younger sister's birthday in late April. If that goes well, they'll be invited to my daughter's 5th birthday party in May. After that, we'll slowly work on re-establishing contact. I also said that, if they overstepped our boundaries again, the consequences would be more dire. My father didn't take it well. I don't care. Sasha sent me a text with more apologies, followed by request to at least FaceTime my kids every now and then. I said no, and to those who said my controlling behavior ruined the trip, my kids had an amazing time at Disney World. They're both still talking about it. My daughter keeps asking us to put her pictures with the characters she met up on the wall, and my son says he had the best birthday ever. I think that's it. Thank you for your advice and support on my first post. Update 2. Last time I posted here, I mentioned that my father and Sasha wouldn't see my children until my younger sister's birthday. The party took place last weekend, and we didn't attend. These 2 months of NC worked fine, but not great. My father respected my wishes, to my surprise, but Sasha kept trying to find ways to talk to my children. She'd call me under the guise of needing to ask me something, only to later say, "By the way, are the kids around? I want to say hi." Every time she tried that, I'd remind her of what I'd told her back in March. This must have happened almost a dozen times, which was enough for my husband and I to start debating on skipping the party. After speaking to our kids, we decided not to go. They both said they missed my father, but clearly didn't want to see Sasha. We thought about attending and just distancing them from her while there, but risking making our children uncomfortable wasn't worth it. My son even asked if we could see their aunt somewhere else without Sasha around. My husband and I explained the situation to my sister. She was upset, but mostly because she hadn't seen the kids in a while. We all went to dinner at her favorite restaurant the day after her party. I also called my father and told him we wouldn't go to the birthday party. He reacted better then. I expected, but we still had a short fight about it. He claimed that I had promised we'd let Sasha see the kids after 2 months, called me unfair and said he was entitled to have a relationship with his grandchildren. I immediately denied that. Though I tried to sugarcoat it at first, I eventually gave him the truth. My kids don't want to see his wife, and I won't force them to. My father and I had a long talk. I told him how much Sasha's actions at the Disney trip upset my children, as well as how uncomfortable me and my husband felt. I admitted I don't trust his wife at all, and I don't think I ever truly will. He said that while he still thought I was overreacting, he understood I wanted to protect my kids. My dad also told me about how these 2 months of NC were for them. Apparently, Sasha started talking about my kids, mostly my daughter, a lot more than usual. She'd mentioned things in places she thought they would like. My father was aware of one of the times she called me, but thought it was a one-time thing. She wanted to give my daughter a gift at my sister's birthday party. He said he didn't know why. At one point, she told him she wanted to plan another family vacation with the kids, even though I told them they're not traveling with Sasha anymore. Learning all of that just made me more certain that I can't trust this woman around my children. For now, I intend to remain LC with my father and NC with Sasha. My daughter told me she wanted her grandpa at her birthday party a few weeks from now, so I told him that he was invited, but Sasha wasn't. He agreed. To be honest, I don't trust my father. After all of this, I'm allowing him to come, because that party will take place at my home, which is easier for me to control. If he tries to bring Sasha, they'll both be kicked out, and it will take a long time for me to consider letting him near my kids again. My father hasn't told me how his wife is reacting to this. My sister told me that during her party, Sasha asked her to tell me she wanted to talk. I'm not reaching out to her, nor do I plan to respond if she attempts to contact me. Both me and my husband have blocked her. My children are doing great. They still talk about how much fun they had at Disney. My daughter's been saving money, putting coins in her piggy bank for us to go back. On a completely different note, I'm pregnant again. This was completely unplanned. I always said I wanted 2 kids at most, and the third would have to be a huge accident. But my husband and I are ecstatic. I'm still in the first trimester, so not a lot of people know. We're brainstorming ways to tell our kids. Overall, I'm happy with my life right now, and as much as I wish this Sasha situation had never happened, I feel like a better parent. After dealing with it, I have never been more confident in my abilities to protect my children than I am now. I don't think I'll update again anytime soon. Once again, thank you for all the support you've given me. I wish you the best. Update 3, September 3, 2024. 7 months later. First of all, my father didn't bring Sasha to my daughter's birthday party back in May. I didn't really think he would. I'd made it very clear I wouldn't tolerate that, but I'd be lying if I said your comments didn't make me a little paranoid. Secondly, I've just entered my 3rd trimester, and the baby will be here in November. The kids are ecstatic. I'm having another girl, but my husband and I are not sharing the sex until she's born. This has nothing to do with our families. It's just something we've also done with our first 2. Everyone, including Sasha, knows I'm pregnant. We announced it a couple months ago. I had no problem with my father telling her, though he did ask if he could. I didn't hear much about her reaction, but according to my father, she was happy for me. My children still don't want to see Sasha, and I'm still not forcing them to. I've unblocked her and put her on mute instead, but she hasn't made attempts to contact me. We've continued meeting my father without his wife, and I think it's been working out. My relationship with him isn't fantastic, but it's much better than it was earlier this year. Last week, I saw Sasha for the first time in months. My cousin threw a party at her place. My husband and I attended, as did my father and Sasha. I knew she'd be there, but since the kids weren't with us, son had a sleepover, daughter stayed with I didn't really have anything against seeing her. They arrived some time after we did. My husband and I spoke with them for a few minutes, and it was less awkward than I expected. Sasha asked me about the baby's sex, and I told her we weren't telling anyone, which, again, is what we've always done. About 20 minutes later, my father told me they had to go. I thought it was weird that they were leaving so soon, but I didn't think much of it at the time. He called me a few days ago and we spoke for a long time. My father is difficult to talk to, so the following is what I gathered from the conversation. He said they left early because Sasha was holding back tears after she saw me. She was sobbing by the time they got to the car. They later had a discussion about it, and Sasha admitted she wanted kids. She married my dad knowing he didn't but hoped he would change his mind. Apparently, when my son was born, Sasha tried to drop "I want one" hints to my father. He didn't notice it, so she gave up. According to my father, Sasha told him she loved my kids equally, but my daughter was special because she always imagined herself as a girl mom. That's also the reason why she became such a suffocating presence when my daughter was a baby. When my husband and I started setting boundaries, Sasha realized she was overstepping and agreed to abide by them. To her credit, I think she did a mostly okay job back then, but the favoritism was still obvious enough that my son noticed it. The trip we took was a turning point because Sasha's dream of having a daughter included taking her to Disney World and having her do all the things she liked to do there. When she was young, she told my father that having my daughter there was so exciting that she forgot everything I'd said about not overstepping. Sasha wanted a mother-daughter trip and tried to use my child for it. Sasha said she regretted her actions during the Disney trip, but only because she lost access to my children due to them, and seeing me at the party, all pregnant and pretty, my father's words, not sure she actually said, was what drove her over the edge. I remember reading some comments, theorizing that this was what was going on, but I still didn't really expect this. My father said he was telling me all this because his wife wasn't doing well, and he'd understand if I wanted to keep my kids away from her. Didn't expect that, either. I don't know what the future of their relationship will be, and I don't think my father does either. All I know is that if Sasha still wants to have kids, it almost definitely will not be with my father. Before all this, I was pondering about my third child's future in relation to Sasha. Now, I sincerely don't want her to be a part of my baby's life. This isn't a final decision, but I've been speaking to my husband about it, and he agrees with me. I don't think she's a bad person. I got some baby stealer comments on my previous update, but I don't think that's what's happening here either. But if the Disney trip proved anything to me, it's that Sasha is willing to be extremely selfish and disrespectful to get what she wants, even when my kids are involved. A couple months ago, my husband and I had a conversation with our son about the subject. He told us he dislikes Sasha for 2 reasons. She favors his sister and she doesn't listen to them. Honestly, that's all I need to know. Looking back at my own childhood, I feel like I was never allowed to have boundaries. I was always expected to put my schedules and preferences aside for others. It's important to me that my children don't go through that. If they don't want to see Sasha, they don't have to. I think that's all I want to say here. I'm doing well. I actually got some great news from work recently. My kids are thriving, and I'm excited to meet my third baby again. Thank you guys. Update 3. New update, November 23rd, 2024, 9 months later. I'm happy to announce my daughter was born 2 weeks ago. She arrived a little earlier than expected, but she's perfect. My older kids are in love with their baby sister, and as much as I didn't plan to have a third child, I am truly glad I did. As I mentioned the last time I posted, my husband and I didn't announce the sex in advance when our first 2 kids were born. This time, I decided to give my father a heads up. After I found out about the whole girl mom thing, I became worried about how Sasha would react to the news I was having another daughter. Telling my father ahead of her birth would give him more time to prepare. So about a month ago, my father told Sasha another girl, as expected. She didn't take it well. A few days after I gave birth, my father told me that he and Sasha were separating. They're not sure about divorce, but he thinks that's where they're headed. Sasha started talking to my father about having children around the time I made my last post. According to him, they started fighting about it when she tried to convince him to get his vasectomy reversed. I didn't know he had one. My father said Sasha cried when he told her I'd have another daughter, and they decided separate a few days later. I'm not very informed about the situation, but my father did state that the decision was mutual. About a week ago, Sasha texted me. It started with her congratulating me for my daughter's birth, then evolved into what seemed like a farewell letter to my children. Not much about them stood out to me, though you'll never understand the love I feel for your children, was an interesting statement. She talked about how much it hurt to know she'd never meet my baby or watch my daughter become a big sister. Sasha told me I had tortured her by keeping my kids away, and it was that distance that made her accept she needed to be a mother. She deleted the text a few minutes after I finished reading it. I decided not to reply. I haven't been thinking much about the situation lately, but the more I do, the dumber I feel for not realizing Sasha wanted kids sooner. I remember she started talking about my father's future grandchildren long before I got pregnant with my son. Her behavior around my daughter, at least before the Disney trip, always felt weird to me, but I still never made the connection. I still don't dislike Sasha, but I think she brought this situation upon herself. As much as I recognize my father is far from innocent, he's always been very clear about not wanting more children. Sasha is 47 years old, and while I don't think I'd want to have kids at that age, I know people who have. If that's what she wants, then I wish her luck. We're also officially moving to Europe in 2025. We're really, really great. My husband and I had been hoping for an opportunity like this for a while. We're helping the kids make arrangements to maintain contact with their friends. Luckily, my daughter's best friend is my goddaughter. This will be my last update. I'm busy with my baby, and I'll definitely have a busy 2025 as well. So I don't intend to write about this anymore. I want to thank you all for the advice, reassurance and kindness you have shown me